I'm so glad you joined me today. I'm Mrs. E, and let's get started with another session in reading. Let's take a look at the genre of fables. The learning target today is I will learn what a fable is. For success criteria, I can identify and explain what a fable is. What is a fable? It is a type of literature, and a literature is a collection of written work. There are different kinds of literature, such as poetry, plays, novels, folk tales, and fables, and these are fiction. A fable is a simple short story. They're usually funny. They teach a lesson or like a moral. The characters in a fable may be people or animals. When animals are used in fables, they think and talk like people. And we are going to read a collection of fables. To identify the moral of the fable, here are some questions that you can ask. First, ask, what is the problem in the story? Second, how does the character or characters respond or solve the problem? Number 3, what lesson does the character or characters learn? Lastly, number 4, what lesson does the author want you, the audience or the reader, to learn? Let's read in this book called Fables by Arnold Lobel. The fable is called The Baboon's Umbrella. Let's go ahead and take a look at some vocabulary words before we start reading. The word unhappy. Remember, there is a prefix in this word, which is un, making the word happy, not happy. How about disagreeable? You see agreeable, which means it's capable of agreeing. And we also see the suffix at the end, able, so making something that says agree can be agreeable. But with the prefix of dis, it makes it not agreeable. Annoyed, it means slightly angry, irritated. Daily, which means it's done every day. How about if it's weekly? That means it will be something you do every week. And I can also make that into monthly. What if I do something monthly? Then I do it every month. Predicament. Predicament means unpleasant situation. Advice. When you give an advice, you're giving a recommendation or you're giving a guidance. The baboon's umbrella. The baboon was taking his daily walk in the jungle. He met his friend, the gibbon, on the path. "My good friend," said the gibbon, "how strange to find you holding an open umbrella over your head on such a sunshiny day as this." "Yes," said the baboon, "I am most annoyed. I cannot close this disagreeable umbrella. It is stuck. I would not think of walking without my umbrella in case it should rain. But as you see, I am not able to enjoy the sunshine underneath this dark shadow. It is a sad predicament." "There is a simple solution," said the gibbon. "You need only to cut some holes in your umbrella. Then the sun will shine on you." "What a good idea! cried the baboon. I do thank you. The baboon ran home. With his scissors, he cut large holes in the top of his umbrella. When the baboon returned to his walk, the warm sunshine came down through the holes. How delightful, said the baboon. However, the sun disappeared behind some clouds. There were a few drops of rain. Then it began to pour. The rain fell through all of the holes in the umbrella. In just a short time, the unhappy baboon was soaked to the skin. What do you think the moral of this story is? Well, in fables, you'll usually find morals down here at the end of the fable. And in this fable, it says, advice from friends is like the weather. Some of it is good, some of it is bad. Now that we have read this fable, let's identify the moral of the story. First, what was the problem in the story? Baboon, he was annoyed by his umbrella because he couldn't enjoy the sunshine. Well, how does the character respond? Well, so he listens to the gibbon's advice and cuts holes in his umbrella. Then what lesson does character learn? So Baboon, he learns that it was not a good idea because when it rained, he got soaked. Lastly, well, what lesson does the author want you to learn? The author wants us to learn that advices are not always good. We need to be able to discern which advice is good and which one is not. Let's see what the book says. Advice from friends is like the weather. Some of it is good and some of it is bad. The Bear and the Crow. The bear was on his way to town. He was dressed in his finest coat and vest. He was wearing his best derby hat and his shiniest shoes. How grand I look, said the bear to himself. The townsfolk will be impressed. My clothes are at the height of fashion. Forgive me for listening, said a crow, who was sitting on the branch of a tree. But I must disagree. Your clothes are not at the height of fashion. I have just flown in from town. I can tell you exactly how the gentlemen are dressed there. Don't tell me, cried the bear. I am so eager to wear the most proper attire. This year, said the crow, the gentlemen are not wearing hats. They all have frying pans on their heads. They are not wearing coats and vests. They are covering themselves with bed sheets. They are not wearing shoes. They are putting paper bags on their feet. Oh dear, cried the bear. My clothes are completely wrong. The bear hurried home. He took off his coat and vest and hat and shoes. He put a frying pan on his head. He wrapped himself in a bed sheet. He stuffed his feet into large paper bags and rushed off toward the town. When the bear arrived on Main Street, the people giggled and smirked and pointed their fingers. What a ridiculous bear, they said. The embarrassed bear turned around and ran home. On the way, he met the crow again. Crow, you did not tell me the truth, cried the bear. I told you many things, said the crow, as he flew out of the tree. But never once did I tell you that I was telling the truth. Even though the crow was high in the sky, the bear could still hear the shrill sound of his crackling laughter. The moral of this fable is, when the need is strong, there are those who will believe anything. Let's read this fable together. It's called The Poor Old Dog. But before we read, let's go and learn some new vocabulary words. Tattered, this means old and torn. Ragged, that also means old and torn, which means tattered and ragged are synonyms. They are similar. Profusely, notice the ly ending, profusely, which means in large amount or to a great deal. Here we go. The poor old dog. There was an old dog who was very poor. The only coat he had to wear was mostly holes held together by a ragged thread. He could feel the pebbles on the pavement through the thin soles of his tattered shoes. He slept in park because he had no home. The dog spent most of his time searching in garbage cans. He found bits of string and buttons. These he sold for pennies to passers-by. The dog always walked with his nose close to the curb, looking for things to sell. That is how he became to find the gold ring that was lying in the gutter. "My luck has changed," cried the dog, "for I am sure that this is a magic ring." The dog rubbed the ring and said, "I wish for a new coat. I wish for new shoes. I wish for a house to live in. I wish these wishes would come true right now." But nothing happened. The dog felt the wind through the holes in his coat. He felt the pebbles under his thin shoes. That night he slept on his usual bench in the park. Several days later, the dog saw a note on a lamp post. The note said, "Lost, gold ring, large reward, Mr. Terrier, 10 Wealthy Lane." The old dog hurried to Wealthy Lane. Mr. Terrier was overjoyed to have his ring returned. He thanked the dog profusely and gave him a bulging purse that was full of coins. The dog bought a warm fur coat. He bought a pair of good shoes with thick soles. There was a large amount of money left over. The dog used the rest of it as a down payment on a cozy little house. He moved right in and never had to sleep in the park again. What is the moral or the lesson of the story? Wishes on their way to coming true will not be rushed. Here's another fable for us. But before we read, let's take a look at a vocabulary word. This is route, or it could also be pronounced route. It's a way taken in getting from a starting point to a destination. So here's this person on their route to go home. And remember the suffix ly? It means to having qualities of. So there are some words in this fable that has ly at the end. Really? Gentlemanly, carefully, safely. Do you know any other words that have ly at the end? Let's get started reading our fable. Can you predict what might happen in the story? The Ducks and the Fox. Two duck sisters were waddling down the road to the pond for their morning swim. "This is a good road," said the first sister, "but I think just for a change we should find another route. There are many other roads that lead to the pond." "No," said the second sister, "I do not agree. I really do not want to try a new way. This road makes me feel comfortable. I am accustomed to it." One morning, the ducks met a fox sitting on a fence along the road. "Good morning, ladies," said the fox. "On your way to the pond, I suppose?" "Oh, yes," said the sisters. "We come along here every day." "Interesting," said the fox with a toothy smile. When the sun came up the next morning, the first sister said, "We are sure to meet that fox again if we go our usual way." I did not like his looks. "Today is the day that we must find another road." "You are being just plain silly," said the second sister. "That fox smiled at us. He seemed most gentlemanly." The two ducks waddled down the same road to the pond. There was the fox sitting on the fence. This time he carried a sack. "Lovely ladies," said the fox. "I was expecting you. I am glad that you have not disappointed me." Opening his sack, he jumped up on them. The sisters quacked and screamed. They flapped and flopped their wings. They flew home and bolted their door. The next morning, the two ducks did not go out. They rested at home to quiet their nerves. On the following day, they carefully searched for a new and different road. They found one, and it took them safely to the pond. What do you think the moral of the story is? What is the lesson that the characters learned? What do you think is the lesson that the author wants you, the reader, and the audience to know? So here's our takeaway. At times, a change of routine can be most healthful. Let's go ahead and review our learning target. I will learn what a fable is. And our success criteria was, I can identify and explain what a fable is. Can you explain what a fable is? And what is a moral? Remember, every fable has a moral. Great job. Great work today. I'm so proud of you. I hope you enjoyed reading our fables today. Until then, reading is awesome.
Math with Mooney. We have a lot to work on today, so I'm excited to work with you. All right, so last time we worked on some things, we were working on place value of whole numbers, and we did not go into decimals. We were talking about division, multiplication of whole numbers, and we went all the way up to thousands. This time, we're going to be working with decimals. I'm sure you're familiar with them, but here's what a place value chart looks like when you're using decimals. Now, what is a decimal? Decimals are similar to fractions, and that's the great part. So 4/5 is equal to 8/10, or 80 hundredths that's on the picture. So let's talk about our learning target and success criteria today specifically. We're going to be using addition and subtraction in decimals today. So I can add and subtract decimals to the hundredths. Okay, now notice that word hundredths. It's not hundred, it's hundredths. So it's on the right of the decimal. You're going to do this by adding and subtracting decimals using strategies based on place value and the relationship between addition and subtraction. So let's start off with like, what is a decimal? Let's talk about it. So when you were doing fraction models, you would color in 1/4 of your model here. You see how the blue is colored in? So in a decimal, it's very similar. In this case, it is 25 hundredths, as it's spelled out there, or yeah, a quarter. Okay, so 1/4, like money, is equal to 25 hundredths, right? Because $1 is your whole there. Okay, so let's start talking about these new place value places, tenths and hundredths. Okay, that's what we'll be specifically working on. So let's break down the tenths now, right? So if we have 3/10, it looks like this, or 0 and 3/10, or 3 dimes. Because again, tenths is 1/10 of 1. So in this case, it's 1/10 plus 1/10 plus 1/10. Okay, now when we're talking about decimals, the things that I'm circling right now, do you notice anything about all the numbers? Here's the hint. Yes, it's all less than 1. Okay, so we're going to talk about that. What does that mean? It's not one whole. Okay, so right now, gather your supplies. We're going to work on making sure that we can work together. So you'll get pencil, paper, whiteboard, marker, an eraser, and I'm going to give you some time. Again, if you're watching on TV, I'm giving you some extra time. But if you're on the computer and you need more time, you may hit pause right now. And once you have your supplies, we'll get started. Okay. And if you know me well enough, I do tell jokes. So here's the first joke of this video. How do you make time fly? That's a hint right there. Throw the clock out the window. I like puns, I just gotta say. So hopefully you all are enjoying it as well. Okay, let's look at a really simple addition problem. 487 plus 312. I'm gonna have you have just a little bit of time to do that because there's no carrying and there are no decimals. Yeah, 799. Okay, so the good news is you already know how to do addition, subtraction, multiplication, division with decimals. So we're going to look at this same problem and we're going to add a decimal to it. So 4 and 87 hundredths plus 3 and 12 hundredths is 7 and 99 hundredths. It's very important to line up your decimal, not just as a trick, because you know how I feel about tricks. It's important to line up the decimal because the things on the right are less than 1, and the things on the left of the decimal are more than 1. So in this case, we have 4 plus 3 is 7, and then when we're adding the 87 hundredths plus 12 hundredths, that equals 99 hundredths. So this might be a good time to take a screenshot of what you're looking at right now. You can refer back to this later. So like, why line up the decimals? Not because it's a trick, okay? So let's talk about like where we see decimals, right? So I've already talked about how we use money. I referred to a quarter and a dime. Farmers use decimals to understand how much crops they need to build. RBIs in baseball, so runs batted in, they use decimals because there's not an even number. When we buy things, we use decimals. And then one of the most important parts too is this is just something you need to know before you graduate. Okay, and I know you all plan to graduate. So let's try together. Ready? 43 and 92 hundredths plus 12 and 44 hundredths. I'm going to give you a good chunk of time to do this. All right, spoiler alert means that I'm about to show the answer. 2 plus 4 is 6, 9 plus 4 is 13, carry the 1. And let's look at this decimal. So what's going on over here again? We're talking about 92 hundredths and 44 hundredths is 1 and 36 hundredths. That's why we carry the 1 over to the ones place, okay? Then 1 plus 3 is 4, plus 2 is 6, and 4 plus 1 is 5. So 56, and do you know what number goes in between, or what word goes in between there? I've been saying it a lot. Yes, and. So 56 and 36 hundredths is what we're looking at here, okay? So let's try just you, okay? So here's a hint. Don't forget to line up the decimals. I'm not going to put it lined up for you. You're going to have to line it up yourself, okay? So 734 hundredths, or 734 and 33 hundredths plus 831 and 2 hundredths. Okay, spoiler alert. So when I decided to line it up, I wanted to really make sure that I understood that the decimals are lined up. So if you see here, this is how I lined it up. I made sure the tenths and the hundredths were to the right. And it was 1,565 and 35 hundredths. Okay, so what if we had these two numbers? How would you line up the decimal in this case? 70 and 63 hundredths and 27 and 1/10. And this is where place value comes in really, really handy. So I want you to think about it. We can't do the ones in the hundredths place, right? So this is what I've seen in my classroom. Sometimes people get confused and, they would put 2 and 71 hundredths. No, that's not 27 and 1/10. Sometimes they would do 27 and 1/100th. And that's not 1/100th, is it? It's 1/10. So it's really important to line up your decimal and understand where the place value is. So if you're lining up that decimal right there, 1/10, you could add all the zeros in the world to the right. That doesn't matter because it doesn't add to the value, because 0 has no value. So now do this equation. You have some time. All right, spoiler alert. So our final answer is 97 and 73 hundredths. All right, if you got that, amazing job. Still working on it, okay? So let's talk about what we've covered so far. We've looked at place value and we've added things, okay? So what we need to work on is adding and subtracting, and we haven't talked about subtraction yet. And we haven't talked about the relationship between addition and subtraction. So right now, I'd like you to rate yourself on a scale of 1 to 5. If you've been watching my videos, you're pretty familiar with this. 1 would be you still have no idea, and 5 would be you know it as well as you can teach to somebody, and somewhere in between. And here's a joke. How are a dollar and a moon both similar? I'm going to start drawing clues. Here's your first clue. They both have 4 quarters. Now, if you know me, I love science. So these are the phases of the moon. This is something you should have learned in 5th grade, either mystery science or science. So there are 4 quarters of the phases of the moon. Okay, let's talk about how addition is related to subtraction. So if you take a look at this, 5 plus 4 equals 9, that's equal to 4 plus 5 equals 9. And it's also equal to 9 minus 4 equals 5, and 9 minus 5 equals 4. So if you need to really get that screenshot right now. Okay, so we're going to work on relating addition and subtraction with decimals, and we're going to see how this is going to help us. So 37 and 94 hundredths minus 21 and 73 hundredths. Again, there's not a lot of complication with this one, so I'm giving you a little bit of time, and then we'll talk about how to check our answer. All right, spoiler alert, because this is pretty simple, right? 16 and 21 hundredths. If you lined up your decimal, you're good to go. So now we're going to take 16 and 21 hundredths and add it to 21 and 73 hundredths, and we get 37 and 94 hundredths. So that's how they're related, okay? So now let's do a word problem. Eduardo and his friends were at the store buying candy. The total cost of the candy is $7.59, and Eduardo only has $3.22. How much do his friends have to contribute if they want to buy the candy? I want you to think about it. You don't have to start doing the equation yet because I'll help you out. What do you need to know from that problem? Like, what are the numbers that you're going to work on? So start with that. And then start doing the math. I'm giving you a good chunk of time for this. Okay, here's your spoiler alert. So the first thing I needed to figure out was $7.59 is what I need, right? That's the total amount I need. And then Eduardo has $3.22. So his friends need to make up the difference, right? Because I'm asking the question, what is the question? How much do they have to contribute? So it's going to be a subtraction problem. And I'm going to take $7.59 and subtract what Eduardo has. Now, I talked about this before, but I use visualization. So what are they buying? Friends are buying candy, and Eduardo has $3.22. And I need to know how much more do they all need? So then I do my subtraction problem, and I'm ended with $4.37. And again, this might be a really good time to take a screenshot to kind of remind yourself, okay? Let's also talk about how addition and subtraction are related, right? Because that's one of our learning targets and success criteria right now. So when we're doing this, right, $4.37 plus $3.22 equals $7.59, and that checked our answer. Okay, now I'm going to make this one more difficult on purpose because I know you can handle it. Marcus has $14.38 saved. His grandma is going to give him $3.25 a week to mow her lawn. At the end of 3 weeks, Marcus counts his money to see if he has enough to buy some Robux. If you don't know what Robux are, they're like money for Roblox, the game. Look at the chart to see how many he can buy. So the first step, and we're going to go over this together, what are the numbers? Like, what do you need to figure out of this equation? Okay, so step one, determine your equation. So let's take a look at what numbers you're going to need, right? We know a couple of things when we're looking at this equation. We know that Marcus already has $14.38. We know that he's going to receive $3.25 for a total of 3 weeks. And then we're going to need to figure out how many Robux can he buy. Okay, so that's kind of our step one. All right, now step two, set up your equation. Okay, so when we're looking at this, we're either going to do $14.38 plus $3.25, $3.25, $3.25, or we can do $3.25, $3.25, $3.25 equals some unknown amount of money, and then we do $14.48 plus some unknown. Or if you're keen on multiplication, you realized instead of repeated addition, you can multiply it times 3. Now, in this case, we're going to solve using the $3.25 in repeated addition. So I'm going to give you a little bit of time to solve that one first. Now, if you're using place value, you can do this quickly. So I want you to think about how would you do that quickly? Yep. So 3 plus 3 plus 3 equals 9. 25, 25, and 25 hundredths all equal 75 hundredths, right? And I'm thinking of quarters when I do that. So $14.38 plus $9.73, right? So now we have our total, okay? So we're going to look at the question to see if we solved it, right? We need to find out how much he can buy. So he has $24.13. And I'm looking at the chart, and it looks like for $9.99, he can buy 800. The next one is $49.99, so he can't buy that. So he can buy 2 of those and 4 of those 99-cent ones with his $4.13. So that's 1,600 plus 320. He can get 1,920 Robux with his $24.13. He's so lucky. Okay. I want you to revisit, how do you feel about this? Okay, so I can add and subtract decimals, 1 to 5. Just really evaluate yourself, okay? And last up, we have our last joke. And if you know, I'm going to leave you hanging. What are 10 things you can always count on? Okay, well, I hope you had a good time today figuring out how much candy, how much Robux. Obviously, we use decimals in real life because I was able to use so many real life situations. So please work on your decimals until I see you next time. Bye.
Hola chicos, buenos días, tardes, noches, lo que sea. Bienvenidos a nuestra clase de hoy. Vamos a seguir hablando de decimales, ¿verdad? Hoy vamos a hablar de cómo multiplicar decimales, ¿ok? Vamos a multiplicar un decimal por un número entero y un decimal, ¿ok? Entonces, ten listo un cuaderno, una libreta, algo donde, o sea, algún lugar donde puedes escribir y tomar notas, hacer tu trabajo. Bienvenidos a clase, vamos a empezar. Con nuestra lección de cómo multiplicar decimales, nuestra primera pregunta aquí es, Harry tiene 5 décimos de una botella de agua en su bolsa de gimnasia. En la botella caben 9 litros de agua. ¿Cuántos litros de agua tiene Harry? Ok. O sea, 5 décimos de una botella de agua en su bolsa de gimnasia. En la botella caben 9 décimos litros de agua. ¿Cuántos litros de agua tiene Harry? Ok, pues ya les dije que vamos a estar multiplicando hoy. Entonces, o sea, yo creo que fácilmente vamos a multiplicar, ¿no? O sea, y ahorita vemos por qué. Eso es un problema de multiplicación, ¿ok? Pero lo importante de hoy es que podemos multiplicar decimales, ¿ok? Tal vez has hecho eso antes, tal vez no. Espero que aprendas algo nuevo hoy. Vamos a ver unas 2 o 3 maneras de multiplicar decimales y ustedes al final de la lección pueden escoger cuál es tu favorito. Yo sé cuál es mi favorito y no les voy a decir hasta el final, ¿ok? Pero para mí, mi favorito, yo creo que sea lo más fácil, pero vamos a ver cuál sería más fácil para ti. Ok, entonces, Harry y su botella de agua. 5 décimos de una botella de agua. En la botella caben 0.9 o, si estamos usando nuestro vocabulario de decimales, 9 décimos litros de agua. ¿Cuántos litros de agua tiene Harry? ¿Ok? Harry tiene la mitad de una botella, ¿verdad? 5 décimos es igual a la mitad, ¿no? Y en esa botella que tiene, es diferente, es extraño que tiene una botella de 9 décimos de litros, ¿verdad? Normalmente sería de 1 litro, pero quién sabe, ¿ok? Es Harry. Vamos a ver cuál es la mitad de 9 litros, ¿verdad que sí? ¿Cómo vamos a hacer eso con multiplicar? Vamos a multiplicar 0.5 por 0.9 o 5 décimos por 9 décimos, ¿ok? Vamos a ver, ¿ok? Podemos multiplicar usando un modelo de área dibujado en una cuadrícula de centésimas. Eso quiere decir centésimas que hay 100 cuadrados ahí, ¿ok? Si contamos, eso va a medir 10 por 10, ¿ok? 10 por 10, entonces hay 100 aquí. Vemos el agua de Harry, está ahí 5 décimos. Y en el azul tenemos la botella de Harry, ¿ok? En la botella, ¿ok? De Harry, el azul, y el rojo sería el agua que tiene en su bolsa de gimnasio, ¿ok? Entonces, para ver, podemos ver aquí que cada cuadrado es una centésima del entero. El agua de Harry es 5 décimos de 9 décimos litros de agua. Entonces el área del rectángulo morado, eso sería el morado aquí, ¿verdad? Rojo y azul, es arte. Morado, ¿sí? 5 por 9. Pues, o sea, ustedes saben que es 5 por 9, ¿verdad? Ustedes pueden hacer eso fácilmente. La única diferencia, el chiste ahora es que tenemos decimales ahí. ¿Qué vamos a hacer con nuestros decimales? A ver, ¿alguien sabe? Puede poner pausa ahora y puedes ir contando, ¿no? O nada más puedes multiplicar 5 por 9, ¿ok? ¿Qué cantidad de cuadrados vamos a tener morados? Vamos a tener 45, ¿sí? Vamos a tener 45 cuadrados morados, ¿ok? La pregunta es, ¿dónde vamos a escribir nuestro decimal? ¿Ok? Eso es nuestra, o sea, pregunta, porque ya sabemos que es 45, ¿verdad? Ahí está, 45. Pero ¿dónde vas a poner tu decimal? Pues si te fijas aquí, tenemos punto 5 décimos, que es igual a 50, ¿verdad? 50 centésimos o 90 centésimos, el 9 décimos. Entonces, si contamos aquí, tenemos 45 cuadrados moradas. Tenemos que poner nuestra decimal ahí, 45 centésimos, ¿verdad? ¿Ok? 45 centésimos. Eso es una manera, ¿ok?, de resolver un problema de multiplicación. A ver, ustedes probablemente son muy inteligentes. Ustedes están diciendo que, bueno, sí, eso funcionó esta vez, ¿verdad? O sea, ya funcionó. Puedo usarlo ahora. Pero ¿qué va a pasar cuando tenemos números más grandes? Ustedes van a querer hacer un dibujo de 100 cuadrados cada vez que tienes que hacer una multiplicación con decimales. O sea, se puede. A veces vas a tener que hacer más de uno, pero eso es una manera para hacerlo. Y lo que a mí me gusta de esa forma es que ustedes pueden ver que el decimal es aquí, que es 45 centésimos, que no es 4 y 5 décimos, ¿verdad? ¿Por qué? Porque estamos hablando del contexto de nuestra botella de agua, ¿ok? Entonces, si decimos que ¿cómo se llama? Harry, ¿verdad? A ver, Harry, ¿ok? Harry tiene, ahí está Harry. Harry tiene 4 y 5 décimos botellas de agua. No, eso no funciona, ¿verdad? Porque ya tiene, o sea, solo tiene una botella, ¿ok? Entonces, hay que pensar como, usar un poquito de lógica también, ¿ok? Para averiguar la respuesta, a ver si tiene sentido, ¿ok? Vamos a ver otra manera. Puedes usar ecuaciones y las propiedades de las operaciones para multiplicar decimales. Aquí tenemos otra vez nuestra botella de agua o la botella de agua de Harry, que tenemos 5 décimos por 9 décimos. Puedes componer cada decimal en un factor de número entero por una décima. ¿Ok? Entonces están haciendo aquí 5 por un décimo, 9 por un décimo. ¿Ok? Y vamos a cambiar, vamos a separar, vamos a hacer 5 por 9. Un décimo por un décimo es un centésimo. Un poco confuso ese, ¿no? O sea, pero ahora tenemos 45 aquí. 5 por 9, 45. Un décimo por un décimo es un centésimo. Bueno, y si multiplicamos 45 por un centésimo, ¿ok? Vamos a tener 45 centésimos. Porque, ¿qué va a pasar? O sea, si yo tengo 45 por 1 es 45, ¿verdad? Es igual a 45. Entonces, si yo tengo 45, aquí, si yo tengo 45 por un centésimo, es igual a 45 centésimos, ¿ok? Otra manera. Entonces, ya hemos visto cómo hacerlo con un modelo de área, ¿ok? Y 100 cuadrados, ¿sí? Ya vimos esa manera de descomponer cada decimal. ¿Ok? A ver. Dos maneras que hemos visto. Ahorita les voy a mostrar, o sea, al final les voy a mostrar mi manera favorita de hacerlo, que yo creo que es lo más fácil. Pero esos son dos maneras que también son bastante fáciles, ¿no? ¿Ok? Estamos multiplicando. ¿Ok? No es como la gran cosa. O sea, yo sé que es medio confuso, ¿verdad que sí? Es medio confuso ahora, pero va a ser más fácil, ¿ok? Entonces, no te entres en un pánico porque tiene decimales ahí. Yo he visto que los alumnos muchas veces entran en un pánico. Decimales no, ¿ok? Estamos multiplicando. Este vez fue 9 por 5, 45, fácil. Luego nada más hay que ver dónde acomodar nuestra decimal, ¿ok? Y les voy a mostrar un truco ahorita, ¿ok? ¿Cuál es el producto de 6 décimos y 4 décimos? Ok. Bueno, vamos a ver. 6 por 4. Ok. 6 por 4 es igual a 24, ¿verdad que sí? Sí. Ok. 6 por 4 es igual a 24. Entonces la pregunta es, ¿dónde voy a acomodar mi decimal? Ok. ¿Dónde pongo mi decimal? Puedo cambiar eso por poner mi decimal si quiero. Ok. ¿Qué creen? Si quieres puedes usar tu dibujo, perdón, con los cuadros. Pero el truco es a ver, voy a escribirlo así, ¿ok? Y eso es mi truco para hacerlo, ¿ok? Si quieres dibujar los cuadritos, está bien. Ok, 6 por 4, 24, ¿verdad? ¿Dónde voy a acomodar mi decimal? Voy a ir un espacio hacia la derecha. Hacia la derecha. ¿Y cuántos espacios? Fui un espacio aquí y un espacio aquí. 2 en total, ¿verdad? Entonces, ahorita es 24, ¿verdad? Es un número entero. Voy a ir un espacio, 2 espacios y voy a terminar con 24 centésimos. ¿Ok? A ver, eso es mi truco para multiplicar decimales, ¿ok? No es la gran cosa, es multiplicar decimales, ¿ok? No es nada más, o sea, difícil que multiplicar 6 por 4. 6 por 4, 24, ya. Entonces, 6 décimos por 4 décimos, 24 centésimos, ¿ok? Si usamos un cuadro con 100 cuadritos, vamos a ver que sería la intersección. Ok, vamos a tener 24 cuadritos morados usando el ejemplo anterior. Ok, entonces aquí nuestra respuesta correcta sería C. A ver, repaso. Ok, aquí tengo 6 décimos y 4 décimos. Si yo quiero cambiar esos decimales, ok, hasta el final del problema para que sea un número entero aquí, voy a tener que moverlo el decimal un lugar aquí, un lugar aquí, que es 2 en total, y luego entonces con mi respuesta voy a cambiar mi decimal 2 lugares hacia la izquierda, ¿ok? Porque es aquí, a ver, otra vez. A ver si puedo borrar eso, no se quita, ya, ok. Empiezo aquí, un número entero, 24, ¿verdad? Y luego voy a cambiarlo a un decimal, voy a brincar, pum, 2 lugares, un lugar, un lugar, un lugar, un lugar, 24 centésimos. Ya, la respuesta, 24 centésimos, chicos. ¿Ok? Es mi truco para que sea fácil multiplicar decimales. Vamos a ver. ¿Okay? Vamos a ver si funciona. Y aquí tenemos el cuadrito otra vez. ¿Ok? Ezra compra zanahorias en oferta por 90 centavos por libra. Compra 8 décimos libras de zanahorias. ¿Cuánto paga Ezra por las zanahorias? Muestra tu trabajo usando un modelo de área. Aquí. Ok. Bueno, chicos. A ver. Voy a usar, quiero azul y rojo, ¿no? Azul y rojo. Es rojo. Ok. Entonces, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 por libra, 90 centavos, ¿verdad? Aquí. Ok, muy bien. ¿Cuántos compra? 8 décimos. Vamos a usar el azul aquí. Ok. Entonces, lo que vamos a hacer, aquí tenemos 90. Voy a usar ahora la morada. 90 aquí. O, perdón, no 90, 9 décimos. 90 centavos. Ok. Y luego 8 décimos. En una libra. Ok. Entonces, si me voy contando esos, voy a terminar con 72. No los voy a contar. Si quieres, puedes poner pausa y tú puedes contarlos, ¿ok? Ok, muy bien. Seguramente ya los contaste y contaste hasta 72. Ok, pero es 72, ¿verdad? Cuadritos de 100. Entonces ponemos, o sea, un truco avanzado, 72 centésimos, ¿verdad? O con un decimal, así. Pero si te fijas, chicos, el truco de antes, 9 centésimos por 8, ¿ok? Voy a moverlo un lugar hacia la derecha, un lugar, 2 lugares en total, ¿verdad? Entonces, cuando voy a escribir mi respuesta, que sería, o sea, 9 por 8 es 72, voy a hacerlo 1, 2, boom, 72 centésimos, ¿ve? No tienen que estar dibujando, ¿ok? No quiero que estés dibujando todo, ¿ok? Ve, a ver. Coloca el punto decimal en cada producto para la ecuación que sea correcta. Ustedes pueden poner pausa ahora. Intenta hacerlo con el truco que estuvimos usando y los voy a hacer rapidito para ustedes, ¿ok? Bueno, 1, 2, ¿ok? 1, 2, 62 y 65 centésimos. Ahí está. ¿Ok? Ve, 1, 2, 1. Entonces son 1, 2 y 3. 3 en total. Voy a ponerlo 1, 2, 3. Ahí va a ser. ¿Ok? Aquí 1, 2, 3. Aquí va a ser 1, 2, 3. ¡Pum! Fácil, ¿no? Fácil. Ok. 1, 2. El último. 1, 2. Y aquí 1 y 2, ¿ok? Obviamente, chicos, les enseñé varias maneras. Eso es mi favorito, ir contando los decimales. Espero que les vaya bien. Mucha suerte con eso. Pueden usar cualquier manera que se te hace más fácil. Ok, chicos, gracias por prestar atención. Hasta la próxima vez. Adiós.